UFC Vegas 96 betting and DraftKings show. We have 10 fights this weekend. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. And we're going to kick things off in the women's flyweight division as UFC newcomer Kang is a 5-0 undefeated prospect. She takes on Victoria Leonardo, who is likely fighting for her job here. And Wong is now a minus 1,100 favorite. The comeback on Leonardo is plus 700. And the reason why, the market is respecting Wong this much is because she actually comes from a high-level striking background. She was a former medalist at the Asian Game Olympics in boxing and a couple other striking-based sports as well. She also has a kickboxing win over Valentina Shevchenko back in 2015. So she certainly has the tools to compete at the UFC level, especially at the lower levels of the division. I would expect her to kind of run through them. And that's where I place a fighter like Victoria Leonardo, somebody that honestly has never really hacked it at the UFC level. She's more of somebody that needs to get her wrestling going to have success, but she really struggles against fighters that are much more physical than her. And I think that's a reoccurring theme in a lot of these matchups. And I think it's going to be one here. I don't expect her to have grappling success. And I think on the feet, she just is at a massive disadvantage in terms of the volume, the power, the technique. Really, the only question here is whether or not you think Leonardo is tough enough to hang out long enough to see it hit the judges' scorecards. Personally, I'm kind of 50-50 on that. I'm going to say the pick is Wong by TKO. A decision wouldn't shock me either, but I'm going to say she does end up getting the finish. We've seen Leonardo hurt before. I think it happens again. Wong by TKO is the official pick. And up next, we have Jacqueline Cavalcanany, a minus 192 favorite. The comeback on Josiah Nunes is plus 160. And we'll start on the Cavalcanany side. She made her UFC debut against Zara Farron, and she honestly brought it to her. Like, that's not saying a ton because Zara Farron kind of gets it brought to her in a lot of her fights. But I did see some things that I think we can take away from that fight is that Cavalcanany is going to push a pace on a lot of her opponents. She's got a solid striking base. She seems to throw with decent volume and try to push a pace. Well, on the flip side, she's facing somebody in Josiah Nunes who also wants to push a pace, but she's just undersized for the division. She's much shorter than basically everyone that she fights in this division, and she basically just has one tool, and that's her big left hand that she tries to throw in repeat. That's the only thing she does is she has an overhand left, and if she catches you, she does have enough power to put you out. But the downside with Nunes, and we saw it again in her last fight against Chelsea Chandler, we've also seen it regionally at times as well, like this is a reoccurring thing with her, is that she has absolutely no ground game. She can give up takedowns, has no idea how to work back up to her feet. It is a massive flaw. So I think in the striking, this one's going to play out competitively. Cavalcanty's going to be the bigger fighter. I think going to be the one landing more shots. She certainly has more tools than someone like Nunes, who's so one-dimensional. And I'm not expecting to see much grappling here, but I think if we do see it hit the mat, it's got to be with Cavalcanany ending up on top and banking rounds that way. So I'm going to side with Cavalcanany. The pick is Cavalcanany by decision. In terms of DraftKings, I just don't have a ton of interest because even though I think she wins pretty confidently, I just don't really see her putting up a ceiling type of performance this weekend. And next fight up, we have Vyacheslav Borchev, a minus 250 favorite. The comeback on James Laop is plus 205. And we'll start on the Slava Claus side. We last saw him against Chase Hooper. My guy Chase Hooper coming through big for the boys last time out. Rocked Slava on the feet and then, of course, took him down a bunch and just mauled him in the grappling. James Laop is another guy that really kind of struggles with being taken down and out grappled. He lost his UFC debut against Chris Padilla as a big favorite, got submitted inside the first round. So this is one where I think both guys have deficiencies in terms of the takedown defense and the defensive grappling, but I also don't really expect either guy to look to take the fight there. We saw Laop do it a little bit on the regional scene prior to Contender Series, but it was more of just like a break from striking, hold you up against the fence. If he lands a takedown, fine, but he's not like aggressively pursuing it. So I don't really expect that to be the game plan here. I expect this to play out on the feet for as long as it lasts. And even though I don't trust the durability of Borchev because he's been rocked and dropped multiple times in the UFC, I still think he's going to be the better striker here. Going to be able to just jab, law on top pretty much all day. Those counter hooks are going to be there as well. I just think Borchev is going to outclass him on the feet, and because I don't trust law on top to pursue the grappling, I got to side with Borchev, even if I think the line is a little bit suspect here. The official pick is going to be Borchev by decision. And next fight up, we'll head to the middleweight division as we have Zachary Reese, a minus 550 favorite, with Jose Medina on the comeback at plus 410. You guys recognize both these names because they both fought on Contender Series last season. Zachary Reese ended up coming through with a first round finish there. He made his UFC debut against Cody Brundage, where he got slammed on his head and knocked out inside the first round. And then he followed that up. Everyone tried to fade him with Julian Marquez, and he knocked out Marquez inside of 25 seconds. So this is a guy that all of his fights have ended inside the first round. So his cardio is completely unproven. His defensive grappling, I think, there's some question marks there certainly as well. On the feet, he fights out of the southpaw stance. He's got very powerful body kicks, and he's actually got some sneaky chokes in his arsenal as well. But I just don't trust him if the fight were to get extended here. And Jose Medina, the guy doesn't have much of a skill set, but the one thing he has, it seems to be, is a lot of heart. And he seems to be pretty durable as well. So if he can somehow stay alive and push Reese past that first round, I think it could get a little bit dicey for somebody that is such a big, massive favorite here, even though I think Medina is quite frankly not very good. But on the simple fact that he might be durable enough and have the better cardio, I think that makes him a potential live betting spot here. I don't trust Zachary Reese in parlays at minus 550. I wouldn't try to go there, but I am going to side with Reese, maybe able to high roll an early finish once again. We'll say it's Reese by submission, but I'm not betting Reese in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to hope to get a big live line on Jose Medina if he stays alive after round one. Next up, we have Francis Marshall stepping in on just less than a week's notice here to fight Dennis Bazian, who was originally supposed to face Danny Silva, who pulled out of the fight due to injury. So now we have Francis Marshall stepping in. And despite the short notice nature, he's actually the betting favorite at minus 145 with Dennis Bazooka on the comeback at plus 125. And I actually think this fight plays out very similarly because Francis Marshall, he's got good intangibles, great cardio, good wrestling, averages over 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, but his striking is not really that great. We know he can be hit. We know he can also miss on a ton of his strikes. William Gomez had him swinging at air basically that entire fight. So he's still developing. He's still young. But on the flip side, Dennis Bazooka, I don't know if he has the type of skill set to take advantage of a Francis Marshall like Isaac Dulgarian did his last time out. Bazookian doesn't have that level of wrestling. Sure, he trains at a good camp in Longo and Weidman, and he's getting good rounds in with those guys. But I think in terms of the skill set, he's an okay striker, but doesn't have a ton of power. He's an okay wrestler, but has been out-wrestled by guys you wouldn't expect, like Sean Woodson took him down 4 times. So this is one where I think it's going to be super competitive. So I would start to get nervous if we see Marshall catching some steam here. But it's one that I also do slightly favor the Marshall side, even with the short notice nature. I just slightly think he does a little bit more and is maybe able to implement the wrestling more so than Bazookian. We'll say it's Marshall by decision. That's the official pick. But the only thing that I really like in this fight is overs. I expect this to hit the judges' scorecards at a very high clip. I think GTD could be a nice parlay piece this weekend. And up next, we have Edmund Shabazian, a minus 290 favorite. The comeback on Gerald Meerschaert is plus 235. And we'll start on the Shabazian side. You guys don't need me to tell you what he's going to bring to the table. This guy has been a early finish or bust fighter his entire career. 11 of his 13 wins have come by knockout, but the times when you've seen him unable to land that big shot early, he just crumbles in terms of the cardio. And when he starts to get tired, his defense is non-existent. He could be ragdolled in the grappling at times. Once he starts to get tired, it's like, he's almost like a sitting duck, but he's also too tough for his own good. So even when he's super tired, he's like trying to stay alive so he doesn't end up getting finished. Now, he has been finished a couple times recently, but I think in this fight, it's kind of interesting because now you look at some of the totals that they have, like over 1.5 is only slightly juiced to the over. I could actually see a scenario where this ends up being Edmund winning a decision. And that's actually what I picked in this fight, because Gerald Meerschaert, on the flip side, like everything I talked about Shabazian, we know what Meerschaert brings to the table. He's a dangerous submission grappler, but his wrestling's rarely good enough to get the fight there, and his striking's not really very good either. So he's got one way to win the fight. He'll try pulling guard, trying to do whatever he can to tangle up with somebody, but a lot of times it just doesn't work. And if that's the case, I think Shabazian could land the bigger shots and potentially knock out Meerschaert early. That's absolutely within the realm of possibility. But I also think that Shabazian could also land takedowns here and just kind of stay safe in top position against Meerschaert while Meerschaert's trying to pull off submissions. Now, I don't think that would be the smartest game plan, because then you're giving Meerschaert his kind of one path to victory. But I also think it's not that far-fetched to see Shabazian unable to get the finish early, tire out, and then just try to, take the path that doesn't leave him death gassing on the feet and getting hurt. And that might just be laying on top of Gerald Meerschaert. So I'm going to say it's Shabazian by decision. And I'm hoping we get some big plus money on that once these domestics start opening these prop lines. And next up, we have Michael Morales, a minus 900 favorite. Another big favorite here with Neil Magny on the comeback at plus 600. And Michael Morales is just a very athletic dude. He previously fought on Contender Series. He's got a 16-0 undefeated record, and he's really looked to be the part. He's got great striking. His cardio's better than I expected it to be, and he also comes from like a wrestling background as well. He wrestled for, I believe it was the Ecuadorian national team. So he's just got a very well-rounded skill set, and he's proven that you're not going to be able to beat him unless you have great cardio, you're durable, and you're just more physical in terms of the grappling. And we just haven't seen anybody really be able to do that yet. I thought Max Griffin might be able to test him in some of those areas, and it didn't really pan out. I don't think Neil Magny's going to be able to do that, because even though Magny does have, the grappling, he's able to give that vet lesson, that dirty clinch boxing and grappling against some of these younger guys. I don't think he's going to be able to do that to Michael Morales, because the times when Magny was trying to do that against people more athletic and more physical than him, he looked like a noodle out there. And I think that's kind of what's going to happen here, is Morales should be able to bully him in those spots and certainly get the better of the striking. So I think it's going to be Morales by decision. That's the official pick. But if that's the case, then there's not really a ton of spend-ups. I love this week, and Michael Morales is very expensive because I expect this fight to hit the judges' scorecard, and the nature of Magny kind of limiting offense on the other side. I think he's a potential fade candidate this weekend. And next up, we have the tough finale at middleweight. We have Robert Valentine, a minus 185 favorite. The comeback on Ryan Loder is plus 154. And we'll start on the Valentine side. This is a guy that seems to be very dangerous. He basically ran through his competition during this tough season. Now, some of those guys, it was to be expected, but the dude certainly has some tools. He's got some nasty elbows, and he fights super reckless. He's trying to go out there and impose violence. He's trying to go out there and knock people out and put on a show. This dude, I called him the budget version of Yuri Prohaska, because he's very similar to a sense. Like his slogan is victory or Valhalla, and that was the title of the episode where they featured him originally. But he just seems to be a very dangerous dude, a high variance guy that is going to lead to a lot of finishes against opponents, but he also comes with holes. So he gets very reckless at times. You can hit him on the feet, and we even saw him rocked in that tough fight to get to the finale. He had to drop down and go to the grappling because he got rocked on the feet because he was getting overzealous, and that seems to be a theme with him. It also, you were able to grapple him on the regional scene in years past. Now, he does have 6 submission victories. He seems to be an opportunistic submission grappler, but I do have questions still with the defensive wrestling and the cardio, because it seems like he's definitely more of a front runner. If he doesn't land that big shot early, I think he's a guy that's going to slow down. And we've even seen that in years past. He's only had 3 or 4 fights that, I think it's 4 fights that reached the 3rd round, and he lost 3 of them, 2 of which he ended up being finished in. So I don't fully trust the cardio here, but I do think the hardware gap is going to be in his favor. Very dangerous dude, like I mentioned, and I think the power difference is going to be key. on the flip side, Ryan Loder, this is a guy that comes from a high-level wrestling background. He's a former Division I All-American wrestler. He's also the wrestling coach at Team Alpha Male and a training partner of Slava Claus, who we talked about earlier. And he fights out of the southpaw stance, kind of has like a karate bouncing style, but he's not very active on the feet. He's kind of waiting to set up his takedowns. He's got some powerful body kicks, but that's about it. And I think he struggles defensively at times as well. And he certainly struggles in terms of the activity if he can't get his grappling going. We've also seen him rocked on the regional scene, a fight that he lost against a 37-year-old guy who just seemed to be a little bit more physical than him, so he wasn't able to get those takedowns. He also got dropped in that fight as well. So I just think he's never really fought anybody like Robert Valentine, somebody that's going to bring the power, somebody that could threaten with submissions if he does get taken down. I just think this is one where Loder certainly has more process, but I think the intangibles are clearly favoring the Valentine side. I'm not going to lay it with Valentine because of the holes that I mentioned, but I think fight not to go the distance right now. There's certainly some meat on the bone here because I think Valentine likely hurts him early, but if he doesn't, he might gas out and end up getting finished by Loder himself. In terms of the pick, it's going to be Valentine by TKO. I think it's one that you're going to want exposure to on DraftKings, and I'm personally going to probably just root for some violence on Saturday. Next fight up, we have Tabitha Ricci taking on Angela Hill. This is our co-main event. Baby Shark Ricci getting her co-main event spot. You love to see it. It's currently lined as a pick'em. You guys know me, I'm a big Tabitha Ricci guy. She's made me a bunch of money in the past, and I hope that she continues to make me some money this weekend because I do think she should be at least a small favorite here. She's somebody that's very aggressive in getting the fight where she needs it, which is on the mat. She averages right around 3 takedowns per 15 minutes and holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and her striking has certainly seemed to be improving as well. You know, she's still hittable, and she definitely starts to slow down, but it's usually not until the 3rd round. Because those first couple rounds, she tends to come on pretty strong, just moving forward, landing volume, just looking to be doing stuff that looks good in the judge's eyes. And then, of course, landing a takedown or two, and that's been able to bank her some of these early rounds. And I think against Angela Hill, somebody that is going to be able to compete in the striking with her and has improved her grappling herself and her takedown defense, I think she can be competitive here. But because I think she loses the early rounds and then maybe starts coming on strong late, I think it's going to be a very competitive fight, but one where I think Ricci has more upside because I think she can control where the fight takes place, particularly early in this fight. We'll say it's close, but it ends up being a decision that goes in Tabitha Ricci's favor. Ricci by decision is the official pick. Which brings us to our main event as we have Kai Bohio, a minus 230 favorite with Jared Cannonier on the comeback at plus 190. And I gotta be honest, I think this line is an overcorrection because we saw Kai Bohio kind of have the squash match against Paul Craig where he knocked him out. And I think now he's got all this hype behind him. And on the flip side, Cannonier just fought Nasruddin Imavov, who for my money is one of the best guys in the division, and he ended up losing in the 4th round. So now it's like, I just feel like both guys are trending in the wrong direction in terms of public perception and market perception. And I think that's why there could be some value on the Cannonier side, because Cannonier has fought basically everybody in this division, and he's fought guys way better than Kai Bohio, maybe not in terms of being a grappling specialist, but we also know that Bohio is not this dangerous finisher. He's very good if he can get to the back. He can certainly control you for those rounds, but we've also seen times where he's unable to even get the takedowns and he's perfectly content to strike. And I think if he does that here, he's going to be in for some problems, because even though he typically comes in with a good game plan, what happens if he's unable to get the takedowns or unable to get to those positions on the mat? And he's forced to strike with a guy like Cannonier, who I think is going to carry much more power than him, who I think is going to be throwing more volume than him as well. I just think this is a very tough test, and you're basically buying the top of Kai Bohio at minus 230. So couldn't be me. I'm going to take the vet. Even though he's a hashtag old, which I typically don't back those guys, I think Cannonier could pull off the vet lesson here. We'll say it's Cannonier by decision. That's the official pick. And as always, guys, fightnumbers.com will have my DraftKings player rankings. It'll have my ownership projections as well. A bunch of other stuff. We have the live odds screen, the fight prop finder, ton of cool tools. Go check it out, fightnumbers.com. As always, appreciate you watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.